Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is on camera begging people to stop driving past his house and yelling slurs at him. Yes, they're calling him retarded. He says he's scared. He says he knows how these things go. They start with taunts. This, of course, from the man who spent years calling his political opponents fascists and threats to our republic. Threats to democracy. But while Walz plays victim over mean words, his state is burning. ICE is raiding Minneapolis. Billion-dollar fraud networks are being exposed. And tonight, Mike Lindell just filed to run for governor. That's right, the Pillow Man is coming for Walz's job. Now, here's the bigger picture. Tim Walz does not want you focused on what's actually happening in Minnesota. He wants the story to be buried, right? He wants the story to be about his hurt feelings and the bad language, right? But the people of Minnesota, they're watching something far more serious, a billion-dollar fraud ecosystem on his watch, including over 250 million Somali-linked pandemic food fraud. Federal raids on autism clinics accused of overdiagnosing kids for cash, ICE going door-to-door in Minneapolis, hauling out criminal illegals with rap sheets over a mile long, over a third of commercial driver's licenses in that state allegedly fraudulent, and a congressional investigation into Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison for allowing widespread fraud to occur. And now federal officials threatening to pull tens of millions in funding if Minnesota does not comply within 30 days. That's the real story. You see, Walz is crying about people calling him names. That's just a distraction. And Mike Lindell just called his bluff by filing to make the 2026 governor's race a referendum on it all. And as we wrap up 2025, it's a good time to slow down and reflect on the year. If there's one thing we've learned, it's that uncertainty isn't temporary. It's the world that we live in now. Waiting for things to go back to normal is not a plan. That's a gamble. And for over a decade, my friends at Noble Gold Investments, they've helped Americans protect themselves by diversifying their wealth with gold and silver. Remember, nobody knows what 2026 will bring, but there is one thing that is for sure. In an uncertain world, real wealth isn't digital, it's physical, it's lasting, and it's yours. So before the year ends, visit nextnewsgold.com to get your free wealth protection kit. That's nextnewsgold.com. Do not leave your future to chance. You can also call that number on the screen, 877-646-5347, and ask them how you can get the 10 one-ounce silver holiday coins with qualified accounts. And of course, the hits keep on coming. Stephen Miller went on record saying America built this entire country over 250 years without Somali refugees, calling it a testament to American skill. Trump himself said Somalians have taken billions out of this country and should be out of here, directly calling out Ilhan Omar and the fraud that she allegedly enabled. Meanwhile, a Minneapolis city council member compared ICE to 1930s Germany. Ron DeSantis firing back, asking why somebody would immigrate to a country they hold in such contempt. And ICE is posting mugshots from Operation Metro Surge, gang members, domestic abusers, repeat DUI offenders, all Somali illegals yanked off Minneapolis streets just this week. And as you can see on your screen, there is Franklin the Turtle. Yes, he's become quite a fixture these days. And what do his blocks say? RETARDED. Retarded. Apparently that's a word that's a naughty word now. It does have an actual meaning. But Tim Walz is fuming over it. The same guy who called you a fascist and a Nazi over and over and over again is getting triggered. Why? Listen.
In front of. Are you okay with the president calling our neighbors garbage? Are you okay with him referring to Minnesota as a hellhole, unfactually untrue? This creates danger. And I'll tell you what, in my time on this, I'd never seen this before. People driving by my house and using the R word in front of people. This is shameful. And I have yet to see an elected official, a Republican elected official, say, you're right, that's shameful. He should not say it. So look, I'm worried. We know how these things go. They start with taunts, they turn to violence. So deeply concerned. Are you okay with the president?
Stuttering fool. He is so concerned about President Trump and people driving by his house. Again, this is all deflection. His own house is burning down, and he can't stand that people are using the R word in front of it, right? Meet Faisal Mohammed Omar, a criminal illegal from Somalia, charged with 2 counts of domestic violence. Thankfully, ICE got his ass off the streets of Minneapolis during Operation Metro Surge this week. Meet Hamed Mohammed Saeed, a criminal illegal from Somalia. He has convictions for domestic violence, 2, 3 DUIs, assault, damaging property, and violating probation. Thankfully, ICE got his ass off the streets of Minneapolis during Operation Metro Surge. That's quite a mugshot. And here, meet Abdullah Kadir Sharif Abdi, a criminal illegal from Somalia. He's a Vice Lords member, former Gangster Disciples member, has a long list of criminal convictions. Thankfully, ICE got his ass off the streets of Minneapolis during Operation Metro Surge this week. And, of course, breaking news, Mike Lindell filing to run for Minnesota governor, challenging Tim Walz. Well, finally, the people of Minnesota can sleep soundly at night, knowing that the pillow guy is going to tuck them in. Let's go, Mike Lindell. You got my vote, buddy. Oh, and we have this. This was 48 hours ago. FBI agents walking out with boxes of evidence. One of 2 facilities raided in Minnesota. Court documents show dozens of defendants received involved in a $250 million scheme to overprescribe autism in Somali children. Tim Walz ignored this. Him and Ilhan Omar are going down. But of course, he wants to complain about being called a retard.
Charging Medicaid. It's a familiar sight in Minnesota. This exclusive video shows FBI agents walking out with boxes of evidence.
And that is absolutely something that our community cannot sustain.
One of 2 facilities raided on Thursday. Star Autism Center's office in St. Cloud and Smart Therapy Center in Minneapolis. Familiar because this is what it looked like when agents raided homes connected to the largest pandemic fraud case in the country. And new court documents show at least a dozen of the defendants charged for their role in the Feeding Our Future scheme owned, received money from, or were associated with autism clinics. In this case, the alleged scheme boils down to charging Medicaid millions for care they didn't actually provide. Wow. Since 2017, Medicaid reimbursement claims in Minnesota skyrocketed from just under $2 million to more than $250 million.
Insurance is driving what providers are providing as opposed to what patients need.
A major fear of Ellie Wilson, the executive director of Autism Society of Minnesota. According to the search warrant, many of the kids receiving autism services at Smart Therapy did not appear to be autistic. The warrant alleges Smart Therapy hired young relatives who had no formal education and who were usually just on their phones all day. It's a familiar
massive fraud scheme unfolding in Minnesota on Tim Walz watch. Consequences. 10 hours ago, over 1/3 of all CDL licenses in Minnesota are illegal. Secretary Duffy is giving Minnesota 30 days to comply, or $30 million in federal funding will be frozen. That's what's going on in Minnesota. The entire state is littered with fraud. The walls of justice are closing in on retarded Tim Walz.
Threatens to withhold.
Tonight, we've learned the Minnesota Department of Vehicle Services has paused issuing certain commercial driver's licenses. And it comes after federal officials say a review found 1/3 of CDLs in the state were issued illegally to people who should not be behind the wheel.
U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is giving Minnesota 30 days to revoke problematic licenses and threatens to withhold $30 million in federal funding. Jim Mason has reaction from the state and the trucking industry.
Interstate Truck Driving School in West St. Paul.
You're turning, now you want it to go back straight.
Trains the next generation of truckers to hit the road.
We focus on safety. That's our number one priority.
Campus Director Bill Collins knows his industry is making headlines.
Do these allegations surprise you?
There's been fraud in our industry for decades. So it's nothing new to me that there's allegations of fraud. It's nothing new to me that there's unsafe drivers out there.
Federal officials threatened to withhold more than $30 million in federal highway funding after finding issues with commercial driver's licenses.
What we found is there have been states that have issued commercial driver's license to foreigners, and they've gone through sham schools, and they're not safe on American roadways.
U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says a third of commercial driver's licenses in Minnesota were issued illegally due to an invalid work permit or the state never verified a driver's immigration status.
Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota gave 33% of these licenses unlawfully. People that should never have a driver's license driving a big rig on American roads, endangering the American people. Shameful.
Governor Walz fired back.
As far as the DOT on commercial driver's licenses, we follow the law as we always have. No different than any other state. We've been notified of it. We looked at it. My statement on this is we are following the law exactly as it's written, exactly as we implemented it for decades.
Tonight, we've learned
Yeah,
that
he
Minnesota
looks guilty as hell there. Guilty as hell. Oh, but who could ever forget this moment?
One has the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said, no one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core. Let that sink in, and don't be a damn bit afraid of saying it, because that's exactly who he is. The former chairman...
Don't be afraid to say it. The F word, right? But you're afraid of the R word. Representative Tom Emmer. 80% of the crimes being committed in the Twin Cities, in Minnesota, committed by Somalis.
A truth occurred. I'm just grateful that you're reporting it. And the reason that it's getting reported is because Donald Trump, President Trump, finally made this a national issue when he sent out a truth a couple weeks ago. We've been trying to sound the alarm in Minnesota for more than 3 years. Everybody's focused right now on $1 billion plus in fraud that has been stolen from Minnesota taxpayers, and a lot of it allegedly has been sent to al-Shabaab back in Somalia, a terrorist group. But you know what we're not talking about today? Do you realize that, it's not that all Somalis are committing crimes, but 80% of the crimes being committed in the Twin Cities in Minnesota are being committed by Somalis. And by the way, the FBI has been investigating Somali gangs in the Twin Cities now for months. I am grateful that President Trump has raised this to a national issue. This is it's kind of like a small version of what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were doing at our southern border for the last 4 years. Tim Walz is as corrupt as and incompetent as the day is long. You got $1 billion of fraud. You got the largest fraud case pandemic fraud case in the country. I'm just grateful that you're
the largest fraud case in the country. Yeah. As Minnesota faces a $3 billion deficit and has lost at least $1 billion to fraud, Tim Walz claims the only thing that's hurting his state is Donald Trump.
I tell our Somali neighbors, I tell our Hmong neighbors, I tell all of our neighbors in Minnesota, you're respected, you're valued. We're proud of this state that ranks near the top in almost every single category. And I will tell you the only
ranks in the top in fraud.
only thing that's hurting this state, as he so falsely claimed to a group of people, is Donald Trump himself. I tell our
I blame Trump. Yeah, and here's more from that retarded thing he's freaking out about.
I'd never seen it true. This creates danger. And I'll tell you what, in my time on this, I'd never seen this before. People driving by my house and using the R word in front of people. This is shameful. And I have yet to see an elected official, a Republican elected official, say, you're right, that's shameful. He should not say it. So look, I'm worried. We know how these things go. They start with taunts, they turn to violence. So
we kind of agree with him, though. That's the problem. That's why no one's going to disavow it, buddy. Because we all know you're a freaking retard. Franklin finds fraud in Minnesota. Franklin. Tim Walz's record is wild. Remember when he did this? He swaps the Minnesota flag to look like Somalia's flag. Then a Somalia network steals $1 billion on his watch, and somehow there's no accountability. Remember this moment?
All right, ready. Whoa, wait a minute.
Look at that. Just look at that. The same colors as the Somali flag.
There, that's better. All right, ready. Whoa,
I mean, if there's ever an indication that Minnesota has fallen, it's this very moment right here. I mean, look it up. Look up what the Somali flag looks like. All right? It's basically that dark blue with the star in the middle. The star is slightly different. It's not a two-tone flag like you see there. But the colors are the same. The stylization is the same. And there you have it. I mean, that is the 100% indication that Minnesota has completely fallen. And Tim Walz sits there with a smile on his face as the billions go out the door, as the crime continues to flow. Tim Walz under federal investigation. It's official. Listen.
Terror group linked to al-Qaeda. Justice Department says it will take a look. National correspondent Jeff Paul has details.
They're calling for an investigation. 4 Minnesota Congress members addressing the state's U.S. attorney, demanding answers after a report claimed taxpayer dollars were ending up in the hands of Somali terror group al-Shabaab.
If you're paying taxes for services you expect and things you expect your state government to provide, those taxes should not be going to a terrorist group in a foreign country.
House Majority Whip Tom Emmer is referencing this article written by urban policy magazine City Journal, which is published by a conservative think tank, the Manhattan Institute. Citing unnamed sources, the report alleges funding that was supposed to go to state programs to help with housing and feeding people was being stolen. Without specifying an amount, the article claims some of that money was then sent to Somalia through a complex network where it eventually ends up aiding the al-Qaeda-linked terror group.
This is a huge black eye to the nonprofit community. There was lack of oversight. There's criminal intent.
Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar spoke at the state's capitol yesterday with other state leaders. She didn't directly mention the allegations of the report, but responded to Trump's announcement last week that he was terminating temporary protected status for Somalis in the state. Trump writing that Somali gangs are terrorizing the people of Minnesota.
There is not a single evidence that the president or his coonies have put forth that there are any single resource from taxpayers in Minnesota that has gone to aid and abet terrorism. That language is dangerous.
We reached out to the Justice Department about the allegations. A DOJ official tells us the department takes fraud of any kind extremely seriously, and this referral will be thoroughly investigated.
Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Minnesota as a hellhole, unfactually untrue. This creates danger. And I'll tell you what, in my time on...
Yeah, tell you what. I'll tell you what Tim Walz doesn't want you to see. He changed Minnesota's flag to look like Somalia's. A Somali network then looted over $1 billion through combined welfare and pandemic fraud schemes on his watch. Ilhan Omar begging for leniency for Somalis who tried to join ISIS. Keith Ellison allegedly met with fraudsters who offered campaign cash. And now Walz stands in front of cameras crying that people are being mean to him. Mike Lindell just looked at that wreckage and said, I'll do it myself. The 2026 race is now a referendum on whether Minnesota survives or becomes a permanent fraud sanctuary. Now, Tim Walz wanted the story to be about language. He wanted to play the victim, clutch his pearls, and lecture everyone about civility. But you cannot lecture the country about tone when your state is ground zero for the largest pandemic fraud scheme in American history. You can't cry about mean words when ICE is pulling gang members and domestic abusers off your streets, because you wouldn't. You cannot demand rhetorical safe space when you spent years calling half the country fascists. Mike Lindell sees the opening. He's not a polished politician. He's a pillow salesman who built a company from nothing. And he just told Minnesota that if this is what leadership looks like, he'll do the job himself. So the question for Minnesotans is simple. Do you want a governor who cries about insults, or one who will tuck you in at night with a nice soft pillow? Is Tim Walz a victim or a fraud enabler? Let's have a conversation about this in the comments, and you can grab your gear at the Next News merch shop. You'll find it linked in the description.